second position, experienced pro driver, but also a very fast gun in the real Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup. He is he's teammate with Jessie van Kuik and also teammate with Max van Splunteren. And I spoke to their team manager and I asked them, what do you expect from Max and Larry, because they are in real racing and sim racing quite fast, and that's what he answered to me.
First,
well, nothing less, to be honest. I mean, do not rule out Jessie. You noticed.
Right then,
Larry
let's have a look at the grid for this first race. Guven is on the pole position. Larry ten Voord just missing out in second. Nick Tandy third and Dylan Pereira in fourth position. Then Jackson Evans fifth. Jesse Van Kuijke in sixth position. Max van Splunteren seventh. And Honka Vory in eighth position for MRS GT Racing. Muller and Mawson line up on row 5. Richard Leets in 11th. Great effort from him. And Lawrence van Thor as well in 12th spot. Then Sven Muller 13th. Christian Engelhardt 14th. Some real big players right in the middle of pack. Hansen in 15th. And Lars Kern in 16th spot. Then it's Jordan Love with a number 3. Robin Hansen with a number 4. Silvestro in 19th position. And then Jean-Baptiste Simonauer in 20th. Jaden Conwright will be disappointed with 21st. He's really surrounded by all the rookies. Jaap van Laarden, a rookie for iRacing, not a rookie in the Super Cup. Fabian Volvend and Steven Grove got himself up into 24th by the end. Philip Sager, Roar Lindland, Matteo Loren and Pontus Fredriksson in 28th. And then the final row of the grid. Look at that. Andre Lotterer 29th and Mark Sinney in 30th position.
But that all can change, as we know. Sim racing is special. For when you go into sim race, crashing is much easy. And now we are here in the grid and lights go green now.
That was a very, very quick start and not a very good start from Guven at all. He really got wheels. We got a bit of contact further back, a little bit of a collision further back as people are bumping around, but it's been a great start for Larry ten Voord, who has clear track as he goes into turn 1. Guven's on the outside and he loses the rear end going through the first turn. A spinner further back. Oh, and that's a big crash. Right in the middle of the pack. I think we're going to lose quite a few drivers there. That's Max van Splunteren who started it. There's another car really high in the air. Richard Leets it was, who's definitely going to be out of this race. There is damage. There's Nick Tandy on his roof as well. Nick Tandy's races ended right at the very start, and Larry ten Voord has no idea what's happened because he was out front and had a very, very clean track. But those drivers who have had that accident, they will not be able to continue. Damage is muddled in this race as well.
Yeah, so there was quite a lot going on in the first couple of corners, and maybe we can see some replay how this happened. But Larry ten Voord, he is now with a little gap of about 1 second in front, but here's the replay.
Guven's wide on the outside. Tandy's trying to go around the outside. Oh, and Tandy, he put Van Splunteren into a spin and straight onto his roof. There was further melees at the back of shot as well. But it was really Tandy there, I have to say, who got into the back of another car, and there was other contact going on further back. I think we've lost quite a few drivers actually at the tail of the field. Right on the start-finishing line, there were people crashing into each other, but at the front of the field, it's nice and clean. Larry ten Voord leads. Dylan Pereira was the man in the pink pig that's had a good start into second position. Guven to third spot, and they all filter their way over the start and finishing line. Vory in pit lane. Now, why would he have gone through pit lane? Is that to get a repair on the car? Is it worth it in such a short race?
Normally it's not. It is not worth it because you lose so much time. But maybe he just wants to repair to get another practice for the upcoming races, and so maybe that's why he's just repairing and continuing.
think we've lost quite a few cars.
Yes.
To be honest. I think we might have lost about 10 cars at the tail of the field. So
we lost 8. We lost 8 to be honest. We lost Tandy, Köhler, Leets, Engelhardt, Kern, Love, Zimenau, Grove, and Sager. So quite a lot in the first couple of corners.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's points down to 15th position. So that 15th position is 25 seconds away from the leader after one single lap. Joey Mawson sits there and picks up that last position. But Mark Sinney, who started last, is now 16th and could be on course for points. Here's a great battle for 8th position. Jaden Conwright improving. I said he was disappointed with his qualifying. He is up there into 8th already. He started near the tail of the field. That's been a great opening lap for Jaden.
Yeah, so as you say, he was not happy, or he wasn't sure not happy after qualifying, but now he is in top 10. Also, Marius Nacken, he is here also in top 10, fighting with Max van Splunteren, whose car is not looking very good. And once you have a damage on the car, you can feel it in the simulator still. Maybe your steering wheel is not straight anymore, or you feel that you lose drag and so on. So Max van Splunteren, he will not be on the best times now, but he will fight as hard as he can.
And you can see a little bit of damage on Marius Nacken on the right front of that car. So he has had a little bit of contact with somebody else, but it's a good battle at the moment with Conwright and Van Splunteren for 8th position. They're about 1.6 seconds behind Robin Hansen, who's just a little bit up the road, and chasing down Sven Muller, who sits in 6th position. And Jackson Evans in the top 5. Jessie van Kuik, I need to say that correctly by the end of this race. Dylan Pereira 3rd, and Dylan in 3rd position. Guven and Ten Voorde. Good gaps between those 3. But this really is a great battle as Nacken just runs a little bit too deep, a little bit too wide at the end of that first sector, and loses touch of the guys ahead of him.
And he was a little bit on the dirt part of the track, and then so he lost a little bit the connection to Max van Splunteren, but he will maybe fight back. While we see some good, nice battles here. Jaap van Lachen, he is also battling here together with Pontus Fredriksson from Fragus Motorsport. And also here you see there's a couple of damages on the cars from the beginning of the race. But you know, that is the sport we want to see. We want to see cars fighting really close together, and we want to see scratches on the car, because then you see it's a one-make Cup series, and that's what it's standing for.
Yeah, and I have to disagree with you there. Nobody likes to see a Porsche scratched or damaged. I just
no, not damaged.
Park it up in the corner.
but to have fights tail to tail, very much. That's what I mean.
Yeah, so replay of Pontus Fredriksson then. Jaap van Lagen is chasing him down. And, he got that very wrong. And completely missed his braking point into the back of the number 14 car, which was Matteo Laren. And Matteo got away with it, but unfortunately, Fredriksson did have a little spin. Jaap van Lagen's got a lot of damage on the front end of his car. He started quite far back in the pack. And I wonder what he had to get through on lap 1 to be able to pick up that damage, but also to be able to continue. At the moment, he's in 13th position. He's picking up a couple of points, so he may be a rookie to iRacing, but he's doing the right thing. Every single lap will be more experience for him. And, Jaap van Lagen, probably one of the most experienced drivers in the Supercup now.
Yeah, he definitely is. Beside Michael Ammermüller, he's one of the most experienced drivers. But here, he's one of the less experienced drivers. While we have here a spin of Max van Splunteren. So he was off track again. While we see the replay here, it's turn number 5. Braking here for turn number 5. And then...
Oh no, he was collected. He was collected in front of him. Where was that Marius Nacken? It was either him or his teammate.
Jaden Conwright.
Yeah, it was Jaden's dropped down to 10th position, so I think it may well have been Jaden who spun. There is Jaden in 10th, and indeed it was, just losing the rear end a bit too wide, and that is going to damage the car as well. So there's going to be very few 911 Cup cars here that are going to be undamaged by the end of the race. Top 5 though seems to be pretty settled. Jackson Evans really impressing me. Not a lot of experience in the virtual world, but he's getting his head down and looking to try and make a move for 4th position on Vlan Kuken. How do you say that? How do you say that name, Jan?
That's a good question because that's Dutch. Van Kuik. I would say Van Kuik. Jessie Van Kuik. I would say. But you know, in the team GP Elite, where 10-4 the Van Kuik and also Van Splinteren driving, he is like the one with the less experience of everyone. But now he's in 4th position, just 2 or 3 places behind the team leader, as Robert, his team manager, said. So Larry Tenforde, who should be the team leader for now. But he's doing such a nice job, Jessie, in the 4th position, fighting with Jackson Evans.
And it was interesting to see some of these guys in their kind of private test sessions earlier on today, getting together and almost going into the same. They kind of call them rooms, and you go in and you're able to have your own private practice day and help each other. So teams have been working together like that. And Jessie, on iRacing, one of the most experienced drivers we've got here. So whilst he's least experienced when it comes to the real world, roles totally reversed in this virtual edition of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. This is round 1 from the circuit to Catalunya, Barcelona. Round 2 coming up in just a few moments' time once we've got this race done, but we've got plenty of time still. 15 minutes remaining. Jackson Evans on the attack in the slipstream down the start and finish straight. He's been put to the outside line by Jessie and be very brave to go all the way around the outside. Jessie gets on the grass. Oh, great move from Jackson Evans. Held his nerve there to turn in because, yeah, and that's a really tricky thing, isn't it? You just don't know who's on your inside.
Correct, and here we see the replay again, and that's a very nice and fair fight we can see between Evans and Jessie Van Kuik. And yeah, so they left enough space, but that's Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. Close fights, wheel-to-wheel fights, and yeah, Jackson Evans, so he's really fast at the moment. So 4th position now, and now I think he's aiming for Dylan Pereira in 3rd position, fighting for the podium.
Dylan, one of the best scores on iRacing. When you do start, as I think we explained a little bit at the start of the program, when you start on iRacing, you get given a rookie license, and you the amount of experience that you have, the amount of races that you do, and how you perform in those races gives you a better rating. And so every single one of these drivers has different ratings and licenses depending on the performance that they've had in the races they've competed in, but also the way they've driven, the safety rating. So are they dangerous? Are they crashing into people? Are they spinning? And all of that goes into a big computer that calculates basically how good you are on this platform. And Dylan Pereira has the best license rating over them all on this field. Yeah,
so it's a so-called I-rating as well. So and yeah, he's very good in there, but you have to drive very, very much. Larry Tenforde, he's also driving very much on iRacing, as well as Ayachan Güven we see here. So the front runners at the moment, the gap stays about the same for the last couple of laps. So Tenforde about a little bit more than 1 second ahead of Güven, and then we have a gap of about 3 seconds to Dylan Pereira, and then another 3 seconds to Jackson Evans. So that's the top 4. But I think these guys know exactly how to handle the tires, because tire wear is switched on here. Because, you know, you have to come along with the tires. You have to handle the tires over the whole period of the race. And I think Ayachan Güven in the green and white car behind Larry Tenforde here in the orange and white car, he will be on the line, so he will know exactly what he has to do to fight in the last couple of laps against Tenforde.
And how difficult is it to get these tyres to last the full 25-minute race?
I mean, you have to be really careful on braking, on steering. You know, you don't have to be too aggressive in general. As a racing driver, even you're not too aggressive in the real driving, you are still too much aggressive in the simulator. So you really have to be careful and soft in driving, and now even more when you want to save the tires. And things like this, Ayachan Güven did now, like using the sausage curbs too much. So the yellow curbs you see behind the other ones. That's also not good for tire wear, for suspension, and so on. And yeah, you have to really have to focus on that. Have to have an eye on that. To be soft on steering. When you look to the steering wheel, he's really much soft. No counter steering, nothing. So he's saving tires to have a shot on Larry Tenforde in the last maybe 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, he's taken 0.4 of a second out of him on that last lap. But interesting to see that Larry Tenforde does have a bit of traffic to contend with. A lot of those guys that had accidents in the first couple of laps went into the pits and have come back out. So Nick Tandy is circulating again. He is out on track. Even if he's a couple of laps down, there's a couple of drivers that have done that to perhaps pick up some last-minute points. Good driving, though, from that back marker to get well out of the way and make sure that he doesn't compromise the guys around him. I think that is Jordan Love that they've just passed. So Jordan Love now being put a lap down. I mean, Jordan Love's actually spent 5 minutes in the pits getting his car repaired. So at least he can now use this rest of the race as kind of a test session and get more experience and see what's going on. Because, of course, race 2, it all happens again.
Correct. And you have to be prepared for that. And it's the best what you can do. Get your car repaired, get out on the track, and then go for another practice, while we see Robin Hansen here with a spin. And this is how it happened in the hairpin up the hill, so which is turn number 7, turning in onto the curbs, and he lost it on the sausage curbs. Marius Nacken, I think he was right behind. He was a bit lucky not to crash into Robin Hansen, but so turned the car back in straight line and then continue driving.
Yeah, so he lost 2 positions there, dropped from I think 7th down into 9th or 10th spot. Here are the 2 teammates, Nacken and Jaden Conright, running together. So despite that half spin and definitely some damage to the rear end of the car, Jaden's still running relatively well. It was his last lap time. Yeah, it was a 49.4, so that's not too bad at all as they come across the line. I think a bit of back markers to dispose of. But the gaps are relatively spread out at the front of the field. And in fact, it was quite easy to get past. This is the best battle. These 2 teammates running together in 7th and 8th positions. I'll tell you that Güven is 0.8 of a second behind Tenforde. 4.5 back is Pereira. And then another 3 back to Jackson Evans. 2 back to Van Cuca, and then Sven Muller doing a great job in 6th position, 7 back on his own, having a bit of a lonely race before you get to these 2. But Sven Muller, again, with very little experience in the virtual world, showing that just patience is all you need to pick up some decent points. 6th position. Now, Jaden, no team manager in his ear probably telling him what to do here, but he needs to be careful not to compromise his race and the race of his teammates. No walking back into a virtual awning to be embarrassed by the guy, but still you need to be careful where to make your move, especially when you're carrying the same colours. And there it is, down the inside, and it's, if he can get the car stopped, yes, done very, very well.
That's the best spot here at the Circuit de Barcelona to overtake. It's the hairpin after the long straight, and it was a very nice move by Jaden Conright with his teammate.
You would expect Jaden, but Jaden's has got decent experience. He's got a decent rating here in comparison to his teammates. So you'd expect him to really be leading and almost showing Hansen, Nacken what to do.
To be honest, not really, but yeah, it's nice. So you see what can change. You see the flasher of Nacken. He said, "I'm faster. Why did you overtake?" But yeah, he overtook because he's faster than you, So just go into slipstream, follow your teammate, and maybe try to catch up with the guys in front. Sven Muller, who would be the next one, but he's quite far ahead. It's about 13 seconds ahead of these two guys. But yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's a surprise that the guys you do not expect to be that fast will be faster than the guys you expect to be fast.
Now, I know that flashing your lights in real life motorsport, especially in the dark, has quite a big effect on distracting the guy in front of you. But in the virtual world, will he even notice? Will he even see?
To be honest, I think it's more for you when you do it yourself that you feel like, okay, I made the guy in front nervous. But to be honest, I think for the guy who should see the flasher, it makes no difference.
And especially when you know that you've just made the pass and you're happily stomping away with faster lap times, no problems at all. This is the battle for the lead. The gap has come down to just over 0.7 of a second between Guven and Ten Voorde. It was always going to be these two at the front of the field, marring any big problems. And of course, we did see a very bad start from Guven and a very poor first corner, but he was lucky not to be caught up in Nick Tandy's accident. And now these two streaking away, 6.5 seconds away from Dylan Pereira in third position. I've got a feeling with just 6.5 minutes remaining of this race, not got that long for Guven to make his move. Again, he was a little bit faster on the last lap, but only a very, very small fraction, and he wasn't as fast as he has been earlier on in the race. So perhaps those tyres starting to go off, or the concentration starting to lapse. These guys are really, really stressed when they're driving in the sim world. It's no easier doing it like this than it would be sitting inside that real car.
It's much more stressful for your mind, your head, than physically. So as you say, it's a lot of stress for them here in the car, sitting in the simulator. And I think when you have like a guy like Guven behind in your back, then it's a lot more pressure you have on you, and you see that Van Splunteren, Larry Ten Voorde, the guy in front we see through the window, he's struggling, he's pushing hard. You can see his back moving of the car with pushing very hard, and I think we will have a big fight in the next couple of laps, because Ten Voorde, he's not willing to let Guven give him the victory too easy, so they will fight definitely.
Gap down to less than 0.4 of a second now. It's getting closer and closer. We've got at least 2 laps remaining of this race, perhaps even 3 laps, I reckon. And Guven is less than a car's length away from the lead of the race here. Ford is going to have to be really aggressive with his defence. Maybe not through 4 or 5, not quite close enough. But there is also Nick Tandy ahead, a back marker. Hopefully Tandy will get out of the way, knowing that these guys are the leaders. He will have that information on his heads-up display. He'll know that he's got the lead of the race closing in on him, so hopefully he'll get out of the way. One overtaking opportunity there, not quite close enough. And now this basically an acceleration zone down to the best overtaking opportunity of the whole lap. Guven feeling a slight loss of downforce, slightly understeered out through there and just rode the curbs a little too much. This is the corner that really makes a difference. If you can hook this up, then you can line yourself up, and he's made a great exit. Maybe not quite enough slipstream to go down the inside into the braking zone, no, but he's got more laps about.
The pressure is on, so Ten Voorde feels the pressure of Guven, and we still have about 2 laps to go, and even, as you say, maybe 3 laps, and there will be an attack of Guven in the next couple of laps, and maybe also an overtake. I think Ten Voorde stressed his tires a little too much, also maybe in the fight with the back markers. So when he was lapping the back markers, maybe he stressed his tires, because Guven could slip through quite easy, and now we have the slipstream coming down the straight. Will there be an attack? No. So Guven stays behind.
Driving really sensibly, Guven. These two know how the virtual world works. They've got a lot of back markers to navigate through as well that perhaps don't have the same experience. And again, just like in the real world, you trust, you have to have a faith with the guys around you to know what they might be doing. Quite the opportunity down the inside there, not really the biggest braking zone, but with 4 cars, perhaps this is the place to do it. It's going to get very messy with all the back markers. They're almost parked up on the side of the road trying to get out of the way. They've managed to get through 2 of them. There's still 2 more to come. And they're catching them in the worst possible moment around the lap where you need to carry momentum up this hill. And there's a back marker right in the way. This is not good. He has to go on the brakes. Then Vory and Guven goes to the outside line. They go side by side. Can't quite make it stick, but that was half the mouth stuff. And he's still in the slipstream. Vory knows he's there. He hugs the white line on the inside. And Guven goes to the outside line. But there's no way he's going to go around the outside here. Not a chance. Oh, creative work from Guven. But Vory holds on for the moment. All those back markers. I knew there was going to be trouble.
That is exactly what we know from the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. Fights very close. So there was another mistake from Vory going into the last corner of the track. Now onto the long start and finish straight here. And there's the slipstream again. Vory goes to the inside, closing the line on the inside. So he's waving back. All fine so far, and now can make Guven the move.
Yeah, and we're down to less than a lap's length left of the race, so the time will elapse before they get to the checkered flag. This isn't a 25-minute plus 1 lap race that we see in lots of other motorsports. This is just 25 minutes, so the checkered flag will be out the next time they go along the start-finish line here. And that gives just a couple more opportunities for Guven to find himself on the top step of the podium in race 1 here in Barcelona. This would be one opportunity, but again, it's very, very hard. He looks to the inside. Oh, he muscles his way through. That's a proper move, and he's run very, very deep. And Vory snatched it back. That's exactly the kind of thing you see in the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup in real life, and it's happened here. Good respect from both the drivers. They haven't knocked each other off, but contact between the two. Guven now needs to gather his thoughts. He's got another opportunity to do down into the next braking zone here. And the rear end just trying to creep away from him. Did he get enough drive? He's going to go to the outside line again, and Vory's hugging that inside line, making sure there is no gap for Guven to go down the inside, but it makes that corner so acute for Larry Vory. He can't get off the corner very well, and he has to defend all the way through the long right-hander at the top of the circuit. It comes down to just the final braking zone out the chicane. Not really a very good overtaking opportunity unless you fire it down the inside. Vory goes defensive again. Guven tries to go around the outside. No contact between the two, and Larry Vory has survived an onslaught of attacks from the Turkish driver to win the first race of the Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition in Barcelona. It's ahead of Aysan Guven, and Dylan Pereira picks up P3. What a massive amount of entertainment these guys have put on for us, and that is exactly what we come to expect from the Supercup and from virtual racing as a whole.
What a race it was. So it's exactly what, as you say, what we know from the Supercup in real life. So that makes even more, it makes me more exciting for the upcoming race now. So we will have now a little warm up coming up, and then race number 2 here at Circuit Barcelona. And there's so close fights, not even in the front, also in the mid-pack and in the back of the field. And now coming up with the second race, everybody is now a little more into what is a sim racing race, what is a sim race. And I think now we will have even more cars in the field. So I think the crash in race number 1 we just finished now, it won't happen in the second race now, but so that's why we'll have even closer fights coming up.
Jaap van Lager finishing in 12th position. Pontus Fredriksson, we just followed around the last couple of laps, to finish in 13th. Mark Sinny will finish in 14th spot, despite starting at the very tail of the field. So a great effort of perseverance rides the curves like a touring car and still manages to get the car facing the right direction. A nice little bit of a show for us, Mark. Thank you very much. Roar Lindland will pick up the final point in 15th position. We did have a few guys finish the race after pit stops and damage. And let's take a look at the final result then from race 1 here in Barcelona.
It was
may have missed
that,
it was because we're already in the warm-up. Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Then takes the victory ahead of Guven by just 0.7 of a second by the end. Dylan Pereira in third. Jackson Evans in fourth. Jessie Van Kook in fifth position. Sven Muller impressive in sixth position. Jaden Conright improving from a bad qualifying up to seventh. Marius Nack in eighth. Joey Mawson ninth. And Robin Hansen in 10th spot. 49 seconds down by the end. Simona Silvestro picks up points for 11th. Jaap van Lagen in 12th. Pontus Fredriksson in 13th. Mark Sinny 14th. Roar Lindland picks up the final point in 15th. Christian Engelhardt just missing out. Nick Tandy in that big accident at the start. Jordan Love as well. Andre Lotterer 20th position. So he was back out on the circuit. And then a guys who either retired out of the race or spent a lot of time parked up in pit lane, including Fabian Vulvend. We said Simona was the only woman. Fabian's there too.
Correct. Yes, and it was the first win ever in the Porsche Cup, so the Porsche Supercup for Team GP Elite, and so yeah, it's great for them to have a full season entry, both in the virtual version but also in the real Porsche Mobile 1 Super Cup, and starting off with a win in the first race. It's just amazing for them.
Yeah, and Larry ten Voorde, not only is he great on the virtual world, but he had a great season last year, picking up a victory in Monza in the real life Super Cup, a couple of other podiums. He's kind of come out of as a bit of a star over the last couple of years in the 911.
Yeah, so you really have to come along with the car. So as I know from my own experience, so it is not easy to come there and be fast. So you really have to get to know the car, how to drive it, and how the car wants to be driven. And so once you get that feeling, you are one of the pros. And that's why we have guys like Muller, Van Lagen, and so on. We have them for so many years in the Cup because they are pros in the 911 Cup car, which is quite special to drive. You have the engine in the rear of the car. You have a very light front end of the car because there's no weight on there, because there's no engine, nothing. And so it's quite special to drive. And yeah, so you learn all the basics, and you learn quite a lot in all the Porsche Cups, because you have so many things. You're starting like in the sports cups, like in the basic runs, in the basic cups, coming up through Carrera Cups, and then to the top to the Porsche Mobile 1 Super Cup, which is the highest you can get for in the Porsche One Make Series.
And do you think that this virtual version of the car simulates how those special nuances of how a Porsche should be driven? Do you feel like you have to really transfer those skills into this, and it differs very differently to others?
Yeah, I think so. I think.
So that's it for the first race, and we've got another race coming up for you after a quick break. Welcome back to the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya for the warm-up session before we get heading out to the second race of our first day of the virtual edition of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. Fantastic initiative from Porsche to get some of their drivers racing again whilst we wait for the real world to get back going again. And we've been proven that virtual racing is just as exciting as the real world. Yeah, and that first race at the head of the field was as professional as you would expect.
Yeah, for sure. So even when you see the entry list with the guys you know from sim racing, you expect it to have these tight fights. But I think also the guys who crashed in the beginning of the race, at the start and maybe in the first couple of corners, I think they learned quite quick because they are all professional racing drivers, either in the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup or Porsche factory drivers. So they know how it works now. They don't need too much time to get along with it. And I think now it will be even closer in the front, in the mid-pack, and also in the back of the field, because we will have much more cars running after the first lap.
And what do they need to do you think, to make sure they don't get caught up in an accident? Because, we saw a crash from literally the moment those guys dropped the clutch. It wasn't even a corner that caught them out. Some of them actually were crashing on the straight.
I think the biggest problem is that to keep in mind to stay safe, as Ten Voorde and Guven have proven. Just make sure in sim racing it's not about pushing too hard or to fight too hard. Just stay safe, go around the track, do your laps, and then once you have that feeling, you can also have an eye on the other guys. And I think now everybody was really focusing on their self, especially at the start, going in with a clutch and with a throttle and so on. And now I think everybody is a little bit more focused on the surroundings around them, and so that we will have a lot less crashes and contacts.
So we've just got a warm-up session going on right now. 10 minutes of that warm-up session remaining before we get into race 2. Just kind of a bridge between the two races. And what can we expect from race 2? The grid set by the results of race 1.
Yes, so we have the guys we just saw. We have them in the front, but also it's quite a nice mix of guys who just survived, let's say, the first lap. I imagine Jaap van Lagen, for example. He just made his way through all the crashes and all the guys and all the cars. And maybe he will struggle a little bit more because now there are really fast guys starting from the back of the field. And so we have like a nice mix. We have the front runners. They're really fast, but in the mid pack and in the back of the field, it's more like a mix of fast drivers starting in the back and want to go to the front.
Yeah, so we should point out that unlike many race 1, race 2 formats, this is the grid determined by the results of race 1, not reversed, because so many championships do. But in fact, the winner of the race will be on pole, and second, and all the way down to the back of the field. So as you say, we are going to have some guys who were caught up in that first lap crash, and so actually going out onto circuit and just getting in 1 or 2 laps was vitally important for those who were caught up in the accidents, because it gave them a better grid position for this one.
Correct. That's why it makes sense to go into pit lane, have a repair of your car, because that is a thing you can do in sim racing. You go into the pit lane, you let your car repair, even though it is very much damaged. You can have it repaired, go back on the track and practice and get a nice spot for race number 2 in the format we are driving here in the virtual version of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup.
So we will be racing again in just 8 minutes time, about 10 minutes time probably by the time we get to the start of the actual race. Just to remind you, this is a championship, so it's not just a couple of races that we're doing this weekend. We're going to be racing at Silverstone on the 18th of May for rounds 3 and 4, and then the last weekend of April, 18th of April I should say, not May. The last weekend in April, the 25th, will be rounds 5 and 6 around Spa-Francorchamps. And then we'll take a couple of weekends off, and the 16th of May will be the final round at Monza, rounds 7 and 8. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, points are awarded to all these drivers, and the champion will earn a little bit of cash as well. And, of course, the title of Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition champion for 2020. I wonder if that allows him to pick up a trophy when they do their Porsche Awards at the end of the year. I am sure, because actually the virtual winner, Josh Rogers, who won the effectively iRacing World Championship last year, he had an invite, didn't he?
Yeah, so it is a program in their whole motorsport world. So it is not just, as you say, just a little bit of fun. It is what it is. It is racing. And so Porsche is implementing this kind of series like they are running the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup. So here, that's what I'm saying. You're not just fighting for this race or for just a little bit of fun. You're fighting for a championship, and that's why sometimes it's much better to stay in second position, for example, earn the points, and in the end, you have to have a look on the sheets for the championship.
Yeah, I wonder how they're going to hand over the trophies. That's going to be a little bit more of a tricky one, because you're obviously not going to get a trophy today, but by the end of the season there will be trophies awarded to each of the classified drivers, both in the rookie classification and the overall and the Pro-Am. And of course, didn't really go into who was rookie and who wasn't, but as per the Super Cup, you do have different classes of driver. Some of the drivers who are guest drivers don't score points either, so the likes of Nick Tandy, for instance, won't actually score points towards the championship. So we'll have to keep an eye on the social channels to see exactly how the points work out by the end of these first two races. And of course then who also gets the prize money as well. We are getting close to going racing once more. I can tell you in the warm-up at the moment, Larry ten Voorde is fastest, and actually he's gone faster than he did in qualifying. Not everybody is out there. There's a couple of drivers who have been missing this warm-up session, including Nick Tandy, who I imagine has gone to make himself a cup of tea before the next race. But we're getting ready to go for the second race at the Circuit Barcelona Catalunya, Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition 2020. Warm-up underway before the start of the second race around the Circuit Barcelona Catalunya, one of the newer modelled tracks on iRacing, the platform we're using for competition today. And even if it's warm-up, they seem to be getting themselves into all kinds of strife on the start-finishing line now. I'm not sure exactly who that was, but it'd be interesting. I'd love to see kind of photos of where some of these drivers are driving, because, you know, we were talking a little bit about rig setups and what kind of equipment they might have at home. The steering wheel and pedals can vary from a couple of €100 to a couple of €1,000, and Porsche did a great job of making sure everybody had a steering wheel and pedal set up to be able to maximise their performance in this race. But then, you know, the connection, internet connection, the hardware you have at home, the distractions of your girlfriend or your dog trying to lick your foot, all kinds of things influence the virtual world in a way that they just wouldn't in the real world.
Even the heat, when you sit in a rig, you sweat that much, like you're sitting in the real car, because I mean, the airflow you have in a real race car is different to the airflow you have on or in your rig, in your home office or in your living room, whatever. So it is quite difficult to keep up your concentration the whole time. We have sprint races here only, but there are also a couple of different races for longer than just a couple of minutes. But yeah, it is what it is, and it is for sure not easy.
Now, talk a little bit about, as just go through the track conditions quickly. This is simulated on real life, so the kind of conditions we might see in Barcelona at the moment. A beautiful day, and the track developing, of course, with the amount of running that we've done so far. So the track conditions will feel slightly different. They are dynamic, and therefore, because we've already had a race in qualifying, they will be slightly different to how we started the day. But talk a little bit about collisions and driving, because of course in the real world we'll have race stewards sitting up in race control watching all these track cameras to make sure the driving is fair. Will we see penalties and the like being handed out in this as well?
So we have a penalty system here working on. So you get penalty points, different points, and once you have too many penalty points, for sure you get a penalty. But it is, I think, and I hope for the pro drivers we all have here in the whole field, the whole 30 drivers, not so easy to get these penalty points. But for example, once you have, like, let's say 25 penalty points, you will be disqualified from the series. And but all the points that you get is up to the things you do. So the incidents happening, for example, track limits or crashing into another car, pushing another car, whatever. So it's depending on the incidents you have, then you get the different points for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does mean that the racing is governed, and it's not just a crash fest out there. These guys do take it very, very seriously, and if they do drive badly, then they will be penalised, and there are race stewards looking at it to make sure that we have entertaining racing as well, because there's one thing that we're seeing a little bit of in the world of virtual racing right now, and that is kind of fun races where it might as well be Destruction Derby, and it just doesn't do for me a very good representation of how sim racing should really be.
No, it for me, sim racing is real racing. So it doesn't make a difference both if you're sitting in a rig, in a simulator, or sitting in a real race car. So the fight you have on the track is exactly the same. So it shouldn't be a wreck fest. So in the end, the crashes we saw in race number 1 was not because of a wreck fest. I think it was because of a lack of experience. And now I think everybody's really focused on that, because a race driver's nature is sitting in a race car and want to win the race or the championship, whatever. And so that's why I think everybody here knows exactly what to do.
Right, so we are about to get the second race underway, and as we've said before, the grid set by the results of the first race, which means on the front row of the grid we will see Larry ten Voorde and ASN Guven. Now, Guven was on the front row of the grid in the first race, but did not make a very good start, got a lot of wheel spin, and was lucky not to be gobbled up by so many cars behind him. In the end, managed to go through turn 2 just in second position. So he was lucky there. Let's make sure. I wonder if he's been using warm-up to practice those starts. So there's the front row then. Behind, Dylan Pereira, one of the more experienced iRacing drivers, and Jackson Evans, one of the least experienced drivers. Again, fingers crossed for the start. Sven Muller on row 3, Jaden Conright alongside his teammate Marius Hacken on row 4, and then Joey Mawson and Robin Hansen row 5. Didn't see a lot of those guys. They were kind of in the middle of sensible driving, but not too many disasters. Silvestro and Jaap van Lager, and we are going to go quickly into the racing. Andre Lotterer down in 20th. We've got Lawrence van Thor 23rd position, Richard Leets 27th position, and the grid is round out by Philip Sager and Lars Kern. 29 drivers are taking part in this second race. Oh, and don't forget Nick Tandy, he's in 18th spot. So waiting for those lights on the gantry to go green, making sure that everyone is logged into the race, got themselves on the grid. Ooh, a little bit of creeping from row 3. Was that a jump start? I think it may well have been from whoever was on the third row. I think that was Sven Muller who might have jump start. A much better start from Guven, who runs alongside Ten Voorde down towards the first turn. Ten Voorde being squeezed to the inside, so he has to take a really acute line through the first turn. Hits the curb. Oh, and that's Jackson Evans, who spun out in the background, just took too much curb. Most of them are much cleaner through. There's a couple of cars flying in the background, but most of the front runners much cleaner through, and Jackson Evans has got a huge amount of work to do now from the very tail of the field. Number 20 there, who was also flying in the air, Roar Lindland from 15th, and we also just lost Fabian Vulvend at the tail of the field. Let's see a quick replay. Oh, collisions already before they got to the first turn. That sort of lack of spatial awareness, and there was a second, 2 black cars spinning at the tail of the field. And then when they came back onto the track, they collected others. So really messy from the middle to the back of pack, and they are playing bumper cars. That was, I think, Lars Kern. That was one of those. At the front of the field, though, it's Aykan Guven ahead of Larry Ten Voorde. He must have gone round the outside and held on to that position. Dylan Pereira in the pink BWT Lacnagar in 3rd spot. But it will not be Jackson Evans in 4th. He started in 4th, but spun out, just got kicked around by the curb. And it's nice and tight as they come through into the second half of the lap.
We have now the complete opposite situation. We have a Guven in front and a Larry Ten Voorde behind. But here is still the fight we have seen in the first race between Conrad and Nacken.
Oh no!
Oh!
Teammates together have crashed into each other. Simona Silvestro trying to go around the outside, and she's just got a little bit too happy on the throttle. Jaden Conrad being collected by a teammate. Let's have a look at the replay again. So Conrad is the leading car here. Comes through the first chicane, gets held up by 83 ahead, and then just gets shunted. So that was Sven Muller who was slow through the chicanes. Simona Silvestro tries to go around the outside. It's on the throttle and then spins herself into the wall.
Yeah, so we have this. We have things like so-called slowdowns in when you cut, for example, chicanes. Maybe Sven Muller had such a slowdown, and he slowed down immediately after accelerating out of the last chicane, and that's why maybe he was so slow in the exit of the corner, and then there was no way for Conrad and also no way for Nacken to avoid the crash. And Simona de Silvestro, she was unlucky on the wrong spot at this situation, so and that's why she spun as well.
She was doing really well on that first lap, kept herself out of trouble and was inside the top 10. But unfortunately, probably not too much damage to the car, but just got a little bit too excited when she finally freed herself from that melee and spun into the pit wall. Nick Tandy was a guy who was right in the middle of things, and unfortunately he's had an accident and is in pit lane. So Tandy was, oh no, there he is, he's in 13th position, but he has been, timing screen's lying to me. It says it's been in the pits for a minute. He started a lap down. Gosh, okay, so a 1 minute penalty, and actually catching up with quite a few of the guys who are limping back to pit lane. Here's Jukka Honka, who we lost in race 1. We're trying to get past Gove. Is that Gove, I think? No, it's Gove's teammate. Oh, and gets collected as well by Jordan Love. Oh, that's messy. So Honka Vory, Jordan Love was in there in that very bright coloured car. Here's Max van Splutteren. Going down the inside of Marius Nacken, I think this is. And this should be an easy pass for him. Good stuff from Van Splutteren. Nacken drops into the clutches of Leon Köhler now. Köhler trying to find a way through. Not really an overtaking opportunity unless you really have not had a good run through turns 1 and 2. And seems as though Marius Nacken's just about held on. What about going into here? It's not really a braking zone. I'm sure it used to be a braking zone back in the old days, but anyway, something's changed there, and now Nacken just understeering wide and letting Leon Köhler up into 7th position.
Yeah, that was an easy one for Köhler to get the pass on the Nacken. So yeah, the field is already a little bit spread. And we have a couple of cars in the pits, but also a couple of cars rejoining, using the the second race for practice again. But that's what's happening in sim racing quite a few times. When you have one crash, you have a couple of cars crashing into there because the reaction whatsoever is quite slower than in the real world. So I don't know why, but you see that quite a lot in sim racing.
And sometimes it can be that when these guys are driving, Van Splitteren spun, he's off the track, trying to get himself back facing the right direction. Here's a replay, all on his own, no one around. Okay, through that one, the long right-hander. This should just be an acceleration zone, right? Oh, he's happy on the throttle. Oh dear. That's what in English we call a billy spin from Van Splitteren. But Jan, it's really hard to know when you're losing the rear end because it's not like in the real world where you've got the sensation of sliding.
Yeah, correct. You don't have the feeling of the car moving around yourself, so that's why it is not so easy. It looks quite easy from the outside, but it isn't at all when you sit once in the simulator, and so that's why it's even more affordable what you see of these guys here in the front. Larry Tenforde we are on board with now in second position, hunting for Ayatjan Guven in the front. So we have exactly as I said before, the opposite situation as in race number 1, and now Tenforde, he will be the one who's looking for a gap to pass Guven, maybe in the next couple of minutes.
Unfortunately, Jaden Conright, who he's followed quite a lot of, has gone into pit lane, so obviously too much damage to his car, and we now have, he's in 15th position right now, so that means we've got people who have been caught up in accidents, potentially able to score points. Nick Tandy completely confused me, I apologise for that. He started the race in the pit lane. He's actually up into 8th position now, such has been the chaos that's surrounded the second half of the field. Quite a few drivers sadly still in pit lane. I think there's probably about 8 to 10 cars in pit lane and some out of the race totally. But a good fight at the head of the field, and we've got a couple of weeks before rounds 3 and 4, so a lot of the guys that maybe have struggled in this first race have got time to practice, time to refine and get themselves in a better position, because actually there's opportunities here. You know, these two at the front of the field are super quick, they're super consistent, but outside of that there's a big hole to fill for the rest of the guys who are trying to get themselves up in a better situation, as we have a look at Joey Mawson, to try and score some decent points.
Yeah, exactly. And also for guys like Leon Köhler, who is quite new to sim racing. I mean, he's doing sim racing a couple of times before, but he really started practicing the last couple of days before the start of the championship. So, and he is doing well. He is in 6th position, and as you say, Nick Tandy, he's also completely new to sim racing, and Simona de Silvestro as well. So you see the guys, they are just do what we mentioned before. They just stay safe. They do their own stuff. Watch the surroundings, and then with going through without a crash and scoring points.
Now, Nick Tandy actually might be relatively new to sim racing at home, but he has actually won a Porsche competition a couple of years ago. Porsche hosted the Sim Racing Summit in Leipzig, as you mentioned, and Nick was partnered with Josh Rogers when they launched the World Championship, and those guys, I can't remember if they won. I have a feeling they did win. Nick was very surprised to find himself on the top step of the podium. Shared a car in a 2-driver race with Josh Rogers. So Nick is, after that, he got a bit of the bug and he started really concentrating on his kit. But we didn't really see him appear in many sim races the last couple of weeks. He was too busy building a model set of his team truck, because he owns a team, JTR, that run Porsches in the UK, and he built a model of his truck and his car. So that's why he's not been on iRacing relatively recently, but this should be focusing his mind back on the job in hand, and running in 8th position as well. So next target for him, Marius Nakin. He's a 2.5 faster than Marius, so I think Nick will be moving himself up through the field in a few moments.
That was quite interesting with the model of his trucks. But yeah, so that's what race drivers do when they have too much free time, I would say.
Absolutely.
But now you see, he's a professional racing driver jumping into the virtual race car and be fast again. So and because sim racing is all about practice. That is sim racing. So you really have to practice all the time. Some of these guys sitting in the simulators from 9 in the morning until 9 in the evening. So they're really practicing a lot, and you get quicker and quicker lap by lap. And sometimes you don't know why. You just get quicker because of driving. And this is exactly the same with the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup in real life. The more you go for testing and analyzing your stuff and everything, the quicker you go, because for everybody it's exactly the same. It's the same as here. So you can change quite a lot on the car. Here you have fixed setup, you can change anything, but also in the Supercup you cannot change too many things. So it's up to driving and your own driving style and adapt everything to the car. And once you do it, you're fast, and that's the same in sim racing and in the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup in real life.
And if you were going out for a test day to try and improve your lap time in one of these cars, you'd have a huge amount of telemetry, one of the main tools really to analyse your performance, to be able to look at how and where you are fast and slow, and then translate that back into going out into another session and driving it better. Is that something that exists in the virtual world as well?
You have exactly the same in here. So you can work with the same instruments you have, with the same software you use in the real life. And these guys are doing this. So they go out for a couple of laps, analyzing the stuff in the software, go out, try different things, and then see what is faster, and then they do their stuff. So they're used to it, and they work with this. And that's also kind of different story with pro sim racers and professional racing drivers. So it's kind of different, because sim racers do it the other way around. So they go and try try and error on the track, and racing drivers from the real racetrack, they go and analyze all the stuff, and that's kind of different. But in the end, they come close together in the different races. So you see, you can either this way or that way.
We're about halfway through this second race here around the circuit. Barcelona, Catalunya, second round of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition. We've got about 15, 16 cars out on track, and sadly about 13 in pit lane, having had various accidents on the first couple of laps. We did clear out quite a few cars again on our first lap of racing. You can see the order, top 8 at the bottom of the screen there. With Nick Tandy in 8th position, chasing down Marius Nakin. And just as I speak, here they are. Tandy all over the back of Nakin, and Nakin will be clever not to fight that too hard, because he's picked up good points in the first race. He's keeping his nose down the inside. That's brave of him. Because again, perception is not something you have in the virtual world like you would have in the real world. In the real world, you can turn your head, you can see a little bit. Okay, not as much as you can in a normal car, but you can have a feeling for where cars are around you. But it's really, really hard in the virtual world to know if somebody's got their nose on the inside, other than they do have kind of a spotter, don't they?
Yeah, they have people sitting there, and for the I mean, here we have a sprint race, and so they by their own maybe have a spotter to have a look for the surroundings, but they have a team behind. So for the analyzation, for the analysis, for strategy, and so on. So as we have the real racing drivers driving the cars, we have the real engineers engineering the cars, and so that's so amazing, I think, and that's make. You know, you have two different worlds. You have the sim racing world and you have the real racing world. But that thing is combining both. And I think that makes it so interesting.
Now, we mentioned that there are different categories. We've got the Pro, Pro-Am and Rookie category. Here's a good battle for the Pro-Am. The two Team Australia boys. Teammates with Stephen Grove at the moment just behind Mark Sinney. Sinney very new to this, actually both of them are very new to it. Stephen Grove missing out in really being able to perform in race 1. So although the car looks a little bit second-hand, he is still crawling all over the back of his teammate. They're both in points-paying positions. He dives to the apex, loses the rear end a little bit, but gets back on the... nearly once now. Gets back on the power, though, and off he goes again. But as you can see, the damage to that car will not be making it easy to drive either.
No, not at all. And yeah, you see Jackson Evans. His car is looking also not quite well after the first lap crash he had, and they are fighting now. But I think it's just, as we said before, it is just practicing what they do now for the next couple of races coming up.
Not for position there. Jackson Evans trying to recover. We saw him spin at the first corner. Such a great result in race 1, but sadly a little bit over exuberant with the throttle, upsetting the car balance by hitting the sausage curb and spinning out. And so he's been in the pits for 11 minutes to recover. And there's Roar Lindland getting well out of the way. I think he may be retiring. And I don't know, he's just come out the pits. So is he coming out the pits and suddenly realised that he's got cars bearing down on him and tries to get out the way? Yeah, just straight on, making sure he's not in the way of anybody. Roar is down in 23rd, so he's not going to be picking up points. Interestingly, though, he went straight back to pit lane, so not quite sure what's going on there. At the front of the field, it is as it was, with Guven leading Ten Voorde by 1.2 seconds now from Dylan Pereira in 3rd position. Then this battle between Jess Van Kuik and Joey Mawson. Mawson, a relative rookie to iRacing, and in P5, again another Australian. What time of night is it in Australia right now? I suppose it depends on whereabouts he is in Australia, if he is indeed even in Australia. But one of the great things about sim racing, you can have people racing connecting from all over the world. The problem is sometimes they're connecting in the middle of the night.
Yeah, correct. It must be in the middle of the night in Australia. Yeah, and there you see how they really focus on that. So they really want to do it to connect like in the middle of the night to a sim racing session. And yeah, that's also the thing Porsche is aiming for. So they just don't want to don't want to entertain. So they want to show real racing. And and once you do that really focused, then you do the stuff like Mawson probably is doing when he's connecting from Australia.
Hasn't really managed to make much inroads on P4. See this kind of battle pretty much stable, but they will have to be worried about what's going on behind, because Nick Tandy is in P7 and he is taking chunks of time out of the guys behind him. So Tandy's going to find himself fighting for P6 by the end. There's Leon Köhler, 3.9 now the gap. Look, he's taken half a second per lap out of him. So with just under 7 minutes remaining, I reckon Nick has got a bit more progress in him. That's good to see. It's nice to have one of the pros actually driving like a pro. Although it was a bit weird actually. He kind of took a bit of too much curb and it really unsettled the car totally. Not the 2 wheels up kind of poised as you would expect. And that really is a fine balancing act, isn't it, Jan, to be able to drive a car over these massive curves and still keep control.
You really have to know where to settle the car, where to aiming for that curves to not unsettle it, and that is not easy. But once you do it right, you're very fast, and so yeah, you have to do it really proper, and these guys do it quite well. And once you're just like a little bit off, you're just jumping around, you lose all the speed out of the corner. And especially at this place where we saw Tandy in the last chicane, where you only have like a very fast right-hander and then have a long straight like we have here. Once you lose the speed in the exit, it is much more easy for the guys to overtake or to come closer to you.
Guven leads Ten Voorde by 1.4 seconds. Pereira in 3rd, then Van Kuik, Mawson, Köhler and Tandy P7. Marius Nack in P8, Van Sprutteren in P9. and points awarded all the way down to 15th position. Simona Silvestro was inside the points the last time I looked, but relying upon technology means that I haven't got great timing screens, but she's P12 now, so she's well into points, just behind Cuca, Honka, Vory. So that's good to see that Simona, although she actually doesn't qualify for points because she is a guest driver, good to see that she's doing a good job. There she is in the ABB car. She is the test and reserve driver for the Porsche Formula E team, and therefore the ABB sponsorship in reflection to the title sponsor of Formula E. And of course, all of these guys that sponsor motorsport around the world are suddenly scratching their heads and going, well, hang on a second, how do I get the exposure that I want out of motorsport if motorsport doesn't exist? So great to see some of these sponsors getting truly behind. Max van Splitteren recovering after an early spin, and he's now on the back of Marius Nakin for P8. I noticed that the two Australians have swapped positions as well, Mark Sinney and Stephen Grove. And Sven Muller it is that's the last of the point scorers in 15th position right now. But you'd expect Van Splitteren with a bit more experience to find a way past. And a little lock up there from Marius just ahead, just locked the front wheel, the unloaded inside left front wheel through there, and opens the door a little bit. That's not really an overtaking opportunity. And now they head up the hill. A little bit of a tap of the brake just to settle the car through this right-hander, and then into the slipstream. Van Splitteren should be able to get it done into this second braking zone. Marius Hakin on the brakes, and yeah, Van Splitteren just a little bit deeper on the brakes. That's all he needs to do, get alongside enough, although of course the track does go back to the right-hand side again. He just backs out of it, just not quite alongside enough. Really, when that sort of situation occurs, Jan, you really have to shut down the turn and make sure you don't have the guys to the side of you, because he can, in that situation, fight back.
Correct. You really have to think of that, and so that is the situation, and that's what they are also have to watch and have to an eye on. But there's a very nice fight here, coming down the straight with a slipstream, and I think we will see another try from the outside, but this is not possible in this way. But Nakin goes long.
I don't think Nakin meant to do that.
No.
Yeah, he did a nice job of kind of shutting down both apexes. Ran deep into the first run, ran deep into the second one, and put Van Splitteren on the outside of both turns. Van Splitteren would have liked to have gone around the outside of one to be on the inside for the next, but somehow found himself on the outside of both. Looking down the inside there at turn 4, not really a place to do it, but he could fire it up the inside here. Nakin holds a very defensive line, locks up, goes deep, but then can get the slingshot. And again, same as what we saw last lap, this isn't an overtaking opportunity, and he keeps it locked down. So great little battle between these two right now. Definitely the faster car is Max van Splitteren, but at the moment he needs to think a bit more about how he's going to overtake, and that is not the place to do it.
No, not at all. So there you have to back up, but now he can try. But he's again on the outside. Van Splitteren in the orange and white car. And Nakin is doing a great job, but there was the contact. I was waiting for it, to be honest. So they were fighting really close, but I think race stewards will have a look on that for sure.
Well, let's have a look at it again. So he's put him on the outside line, and again, Nakin's run deep into the curve, so he's going to have to then sharpen it up. And of course, already Van Splitteren's already accelerating out of the turn, isn't he? So he's got the momentum, whereas Nakin's still trying to turn and get himself sorted to get out of that turn.
Correct, but still, you cannot go. You cannot touch the car in front of you on the rear end. So you have to find your way around it. So I think stewards will have a look on it, because Nakin didn't do anything wrong. So he was closing the inside line. He was slowing down himself much more than he should, because he was on the inside line. And Van Splitteren tried to have a bit better exit and tried to overtake, but he was too close, and he had a better momentum, but he was, as I say, too close to the car and just touched it.
This is the last lap. It's been so entertaining further back that we haven't had a chance to really look at Aykan Guven, who finished P2 in race 1 but has led from the lights and has pretty much remained unchallenged throughout the whole of this race. Larry ten Voorde not being able to keep up the pace in race 2, and the Turkish driver who finished P2 in the Supercup last season with a victory at Silverstone. He finished P2 in the real world last year in Catalonia, but he's taken victory in the virtual world. Winner of race 2, Aykan Guven. Larry ten Voorde picks up second position, and that will put both of them on equal points going into the second weekend of racing. Over the line in P3, Dylan Pereira picks up third spot. And we're going to have a long wait before we get all 15 of our drivers over the finishing line. Some names that we didn't really speak too much about further down the field. Here's Honka Vory, who retired out of the first race, had a spin in this one, and still putting pressure on Philip Sager. And maybe trying to get himself into the top 10. It would be a brave place to do it into the chicane. He fires it down the inside anyway. That's almost guaranteed contact. And, Philip Sager decides to back out of it. So Cuca does get the position up into P10, points for P10. But again, stewards, I think, might have a word to say about that rather over-enthusiastic late-braking manoeuvre. Further back, here is Mark Sinney. And just ahead of him, Stephen Grove. So Grove, with the more damaged machine, has managed to make a break of things. And those two teammates, there he is. So Stephen Grove will pick up points for 13th position, his teammate 14th, and we'll wait to find out if Sven Muller will be able to pick up 15th position and the last points scoring spot. Team Australia come around the finishing line, whatever time it is at night, over down under, and it is Grove ahead of Sinney. And the last of our 15 cars is Sven Muller in 15th spot. So Richard Leets just missing out on points, and Pontus Fredriksson as well. So here are the official results of race 2 of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition. Aykan Guven beating Larry ten Voorde by 1.9 seconds in the end, with Dylan Pereira in third. Jessie van Hoyk in fourth, with Joey Mawson an impressive 5th position. And then Leon Köhler in 6th, winning the rookie class ahead of Nick Tandy in 7th, Max van Splutteren in 8th, and Marius Hack in 9th, with Honka Vory picking up that top 10's finish. Philip Sager, the first of our Pro-Am drivers, in 11th, then Simona Di Silvestro, our guest driver, in 12th, Stephen Grove and Mark Sinney, with Sven Muller in 15th spot. Richard Leets, Jaden Conright, Fredriksson, Lotterer and Jackson Evans missing out. And then some of the drivers that sadly did not manage to make it past the first lap. Jaap van Lagen will be hoping to do more, as will Christian Engelhardt, Robin Hansen, Fabian Volvend and Lawrence Van Thor didn't even take the start. So a very entertaining 2 races around the Circuit de Catalunya. But as this was announced quite late, I imagine the form is going to change quite a lot, Jan, with all of these drivers gaining more and more experience each day.
I think now they know exactly what to do for the next couple of weeks, what to practice and what to do, because they have 2 weeks to go until they go to Silverstone. And then I think they will practice now all day long. As they see, it's not that easy as they might thought. Yeah, let's see. When we go to Silverstone, it's another story. I mean, Barcelona is one thing, but Silverstone is the other one. And I think now, people like I can imagine like Lotterer, like Leets, like Van Lagen and Muller. They really on it now, and they want to be in front as well. So I think the practice service on iRacing will be hot and will glow.
So let's have a look at at the first lap of the race. We're going to have a look at ISN Guven, because of course started P2 after finishing race 1 in P2, and we were so focused on all the crashing further back we didn't get a chance really to see exactly what happened. So a little bit unsettled from Larry ten Voorde through turn 2. They run side by side, but I think Guven's just going to hang it around the outside, isn't he?
Yeah, he's running on the outside of turn number 4, and then on the braking again on the outside. So they were running like a couple of corners side by side, but now he's on the better line. So the green and white car, Guven, is on the better line, on the inside line, and is taking the first spot from ten Voorde.
That was a really, really impressive move. To have the faith in the driver on the inside of you, not to kind of shoulder you off the track, and also to have the grip. He must have done a good job because everyone will have started, presumably, with the same kind of temperature in their tyres and brakes.
Correct, yeah. So, but there you see how professional they are. They're watching mirrors, and they're watching side by side all the time long. And yeah, so that's what is nice here, and in the real version as well, because the same pictures you see here, you will see in the Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup once they start the season. Because as I said, we talked to Olli Schwab, and he told me, or he told us, that their goal, their aim is to run 8 races. So they don't know at the moment for sure, because nobody really knows what is the plan, but their goal is to do 8 races for the real Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup in 2020.
They're running on board with our eventual winner, and you can kind of see just how tricky it is to know where Larry ten Voorde is at the moment. You know, looking out that front window, it looks as though there is no car anywhere to be seen. But obviously we know from the outside that there was a car running on his right-hand side. He, of course, we've talked about the audible kind of spotter that is part of iRacing, but he's done a great job all the way around the outside there. And finally there's a turn that goes left that gives him the inside line.
Yeah, you can see all the time he left always a little bit of space to the inside or outside, and so he knew that there's another car, and that's what it makes it so special and so professional.
Of course, the tyres and the brakes are not up to temperature right now. They are still a little bit cold, so knowing just how hard you can push, how much grip you do have, and then setting about pushing enough to stay ahead, but without taking too much out of those tyres, knowing that they have to last the full 25-minute race.
What I really like is how Guven, you can see here on the onboard, how smooth he is driving. So he's really soft on the steering, and I know he's really like precision on how he handles the throttle and brakes and stuff. So yeah, it is very professional driving what they do, and that's how they practice all the stuff, and that's why we see so close fights. And but you know, everybody will go there and will come there. We see here the start again. We have Andre Lotterer in the Hugo Boss car. So it was his first attempt in the sim racing. But you know, I like it to have these guys in here, because before you sit at home, you go racing. And how to go racing in these times? You do it from your home. That's why it's called home office. Their office is a race car, and so bring the office back home. And so that's what they do, driving here in the Porsche 911 Cup car.
Yeah, great to see Andre Lotterer, obviously a big celebrity in the world of Porsche motorsport, winner at Le Mans, and racing now for the Porsche Formula E team. Just got a little bit loose there through turn 3. Managed to avoid all the chaos that was happening in front of him. Just a little tap, but didn't pick up too much damage. And you can see just how tentative he's being. He doesn't really have faith in the car. It's the car behaviour looks so different.
Yep. And you see, and you really can see that there's everybody knows who's in the car, because you know, as a race driver, you know who is in the car in front of me or behind me.
Oh.
That was a crash. Because until there it was all okay. Some looking here, some looking there, but that was the huge crash he had, why he fell back so much in the grid.
Yeah, so who was that was spinning? Was that the Tag Heuer car? So I think that must have been Lawrence Van Thor.
Yeah,
squeezed.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. So the Porsche factory drivers, but that's what I said before. I think sometimes it feels like in sim racing, the reaction time, you have to be so much quicker in reaction time, because in real life, if there's a car standing like this, you're preparing yourself, and you can react really quick. But here, you see it so often that people crash into other cars. Like standing cars. Here we see why Fantor spun. He was on the inside line, and then Lotterer couldn't avoid the crash.
Yeah, just kind of got squeezed, didn't he, by one of the Team Australia guys? Just was having to add a little bit of input, a little bit of turning input mid-corner, which upset the balance of the car and ultimately put him into a spin.
Yeah. So he was he couldn't do also anything. So yeah, I think also race control and stewards will talk in the next couple of days to the drivers once again to have the races you just want to see. I think the Silverstone race will be a complete different story.
Yeah, as you say, hopefully half the grid were basically iRacing rookies before Porsche announced this initiative, and so bringing plenty more drivers to iRacing, but they are so far behind the likes of Ayhan Guven and Larry ten Voorde when it comes to experience in this particular platform. They may have done some sim racing in other platforms, but every platform is like a different car, right? You have a different feel from platform to platform, as well as from car to car within those platforms. So just looking at the race results then from the second race, Guven beating ten Voorde. And of course, it was a different story in race one, because Larry ten Voorde took victory ahead of Ayhan Guven. Dylan Pereira with a couple of third positions, so solid for BWT Lechner Racing and their points haul, because of course, teammate is Michael Muller, three-time Supercup champion in the real world, but a non-starter in these first two races, and he will be on the back foot then when it comes to Silverstone. And the experience, okay, he can experience outside of racing, but he'll be looking to try and gain as much experience as possible, because he will not. They're all racing drivers, right? They all want to win regardless of what they're doing.
Right, yeah. Once you go into a race, the only thing you want to do is win. There's nothing else. So you don't go there to fill up the field. And so in the end, everybody who's joining here is wants to be a winner, and so that's why I like the Porsche to have their factory drivers also in here, because now you can really see on another level. So you have like the factory racing world where they are like worldwide number one. So they are special racing drivers, really good racing drivers. But now they come also into a world of another world, like sim racing world. And here they have to start, let's say, from the beginning. So they have their strengths, what they do, what they've learned, and what experience they have from the real racing. But now they have to start from the beginning and have to climb up the ladder again, and that's what I like, and that's what also they aiming for, and that's what it makes it so special.
So if you're watching this for the very first time, you know about real-life Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup, and you've gone, oh, this looks pretty good, and not quite sure exactly what you're watching, because there are many times where I've flicked on over the last couple of weeks to streams of races and gone, what's that? Oh, gosh, that's virtual. This is iRacing, the platform, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of people online on iRacing every day wanting to go racing, whether it be on circuits like this, European circuits, Silverstone, Spa, Monza, or indeed ovals in America. You can drive off-road and rallycross cars. There's all kinds of different things to do, and you can sign up, just download the game, get yourself a steering wheel and pedals. As we said, just a couple of €100 will kit you out, and then you could be part of this. And in fact, you can find yourself in lobbies with some of these drivers practicing for the next event.
And you have over 100,000 of active users on the iRacing platform, for example. And everybody can go there. You go to your to the shop, you get a wheel, you get the pedals, and then you can start. You need a PC, okay? But so then you can start with the driving, and you can drive against Formula One drivers. You can drive against Porsche factory drivers, and whatsoever. And so that brings the whole world together. And so that's so nice. And to be honest, when can you drive a Porsche RSR ever in your life? But you can do in iRacing, for example. So I've never driven a Porsche RSR in real life, but I did here in iRacing. So and the good thing is, as Porsche is working so close together with the simulation software developer, the cars feel exactly like they are in the real world. And so once you're driving an RSR, Porsche RSR, so the Le Mans car, here in iRacing, you know how it feels to drive the car in the real world. So because it's exactly the same car, and it looks exactly the same, it feels exactly the same. And that's what I really like here on this platform.
Absolutely. An amazing platform, a beautiful platform as well. And as I've done many a time this last couple of weeks, got myself mistaken for real world and virtual world races. And we're going to have not just this, but a couple more rounds of this championship before hopefully the real world kicks off. We go on the 18th of April to our next round. And, Silverstone isn't that much different to Circuit de Catalunya in terms of characteristics, right? You've got the fast corners, a couple of slow corners, long straights.
Yeah, the only difference is maybe the weather. So a typical British weather over there. No, to be honest. So maybe that's also a part we can talk about, because they can simulate everything. For example, they simulate track temperatures, wind, outside temperatures, the racing line. So the cars driving racing lines, so the racing line is warmer than offline, and so on. But there's one thing missing: rain. Rain is at the moment in iRacing missing. But as you know from internal information, they're really much working on it. And so if there's anybody out there who is not really into the sim racing or iRacing world, we will not have rain races, so wet races, but it will come. But in the end, we have the so-called dynamic weather. So weather conditions changing, like you have clouds, no clouds, wind is changing, and so on. And this is also affecting cars and track, and you really have to adapt it on your driving style. And I think that's what's coming up also for the next couple of rounds.
Oh, well, Silverstone in mid-April, it's almost guaranteed to be, if not wet, then at least cold and a very low track temperature, and therefore very hard to get the tyres working. After that, we go to Spa, another place very well known for its bad weather, at the end of April. And in fact, that's the same weekend that WEC should have been racing there. So that would be nice to go to Spa for rounds 5 and 6. Same format, 2 races, qualifying session. Hopefully many of the same guest drivers and for sure many of the Supercup drivers that we've already seen, plus a few that had a few issues. And then we will finish the championship in Monza in the middle of May. A slipstreaming track that always provides fantastic racing, whether it be virtual or real.
Yeah, so as you say, a very exciting season ahead of us, and we both looking very much forward to it. This was the round number 1 and 2, race number 1 and 2 here at Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, and I think now everybody is keen on what is going on here, and they really much also in the factory at Stuttgart looking into these kind of racing, because it was the first time Porsche ever did a thing like that. So the real racing drivers going into a sim race, because they have their Tag Heuer esports Supercup, so which format they had last year, and but this is for sim races. This is for pro sim races. This series here is for the real racing drivers. So it's a different format, and I like it, and I think and I hope to see many more championships and series like this coming up.
And who do we think is going to be the outside of those first 2, who clearly have an advantage, or even the top 3 are a kind of a separate club above the rest? Who are we going to see improve for Silverstone in a couple of weeks' time? Who perhaps you would expect to be higher up, but maybe got caught up in accidents?
I have a couple of names. For example, Leon Köhler. I think he will be one. He will be one of these guys. Nick Tandy. As well. So Nick will for sure not working on his models again.
No, he's finished it now. So exactly.
So he will be in the simulator all the time. Max von Splunteren, for example, but also guys. I think guys like Andre Lotterer. He is fixed on that. I know he's that kind of winner guy. He wants to be up there, not down at the bottom of the results, and he will fight for it. And so I think there are a couple of names, but also Simona de Silvestro, one of our 2 female drivers here in the field. She did a really good job. So I think she will also climb up the results.
I'm going to tip Jackson Evans to get a better result. Obviously got a good result in the first race, but sadly out the points in the second one. So a man to watch out for, but has a bit of experience on the platform. And my biggest surprise, I think, has to be Marius Nakin and the solid performance that he put in, probably thanks to his very experienced teammate Jaden Conright. But Marius was in the top 10, not necessarily the fastest, but he can go from there. It's a good platform to work on and get himself to the sharp end of the field. Well, Jan Seifert, thank you so much for joining us on these first 2 rounds of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition. A pleasure to work alongside you, and I can't wait for Silverstone in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, same here, and very much looking forward to the next couple of races, and I hope to have you guys as spectators on here as well.
Thanks very much, Jan. See you again on the 18th of April for rounds 3 and 4 at Silverstone of the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition. Goodbye.